my name is Brian Clancy, and welcome to the Fulcrum Democracy Forum Meet the Change Leaders program, made possible by our dear friends at CityBiz. It's all about celebrating the work of America's most innovative and inspiring leaders who are working to change our toxic politics. We always do two things in these interviews. We learn about what these leaders are doing and why it matters, but we also identify how all Americans can get involved in supporting their efforts in 2024 and beyond. Today, I'm incredibly honored to have Harry Gottlieb, who's the founder of Unify America, with us for their interview. I know a lot of organizations in this space who are working very, very hard and tirelessly to heal American politics, and they all have their hearts in the right place. But what impresses me so much about Harry and his team is how grounded they are in cutting-edge social science research, and how they don't let that get in the way of making their work accessible, inspiring, and fun. This is a reflection of Harry's remarkable background in making technology compelling and empowering. So I want to jump in as soon as possible and get to the questions. And so, Harry, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, great. What's the most important thing you want all Americans to know about your organization and the role it's playing in helping address polarization and toxic politics? This is really a chance for your elevator pitch to America.
So, I think the most important thing I'd want Americans to know isn't about Unify America. It's about themselves. When I tell people that the name of our organization is Unify America, not infrequently, the response is, well, good luck with that. But here is a secret. We Americans are already unified and we don't know it. Conflict entrepreneurs in politics and the media are very good at convincing us that we're deeply divided because it advantages them to divide us. But we know from the survey work that we're doing that most Americans, regardless of how they vote, have shared goals for our country. And I should probably explain what I mean by shared goals. I don't mean that we all believe in, for example, Medicare for all. But Medicare for all isn't a goal, it's a tactic. The goal is everyone should have access to high quality, affordable health care, somehow. Like that's a goal. That's an end result we want to achieve. And well over 90% of Americans agree with that goal. And so just one more example, just to show you, like these examples, it covers the whole range of political issues. So here's another one on immigration. We don't agree on whether to build a border wall, but a border wall it's a tactic. If you ask Americans, should we be able to know and determine who is coming in and out of our country? Over 80% of Americans, again, based on our survey work across the political spectrum, agree with that. Americans are united because we mostly have shared goals and we just don't know it. Now, of course, we have different ideas about how to achieve these shared goals. But if you're trying to solve problems, you want to bring people together who have different ideas. I mean, right? If you're the leader of an organization and you've got a problem, do you want everyone on your senior team to think the same way? Like, of course you don't. You want people who can generate different approaches to solve the problem, who can punch holes in those approaches, who can then come up with even better solutions and do it together. You want people at the table with different perspectives who are listening and learning from each other to arrive at wiser decisions. And in a problem-solving context, our differing perspectives, which are used against us in a political context, but in a problem-solving context, our differing perspectives are our collective superpower. And what we are doing at Unify America is working to help Americans experience the reality that we have shared goals, and then to harness the power of our different perspectives to solve our common problems and to achieve our shared goals.
Harry, that framing, that reframing is incredibly powerful. And I think that decoupling of the why and what from the how, the obsession with the how, and the tensions of the different visions of how to implement things is part of your secret sauce. And I also appreciate you highlighting, your polling and a lot of polling that's been done, that there is more common ground than we're able to act on day to day, thanks to the media.
I mean, it's almost everything, Brian. I mean, when I first started to do this, like this hypothesis, which was, I think we actually want the same things, and we don't realize it. The survey that we originally put together, it was 50 questions long, covering every issue. And I'm telling you, we had people by the time we did a lot of wordsmithing, to like, how do you word these in the right way? But after we got through that process, we'd have people, this is back in 2019, we had people who were like Trump voters and Bernie supporters who we put together, and they take the survey together, and they would agree on 45 out of 50 questions. I mean, like, we are massively unified and we don't know it because we're all being pointed in the wrong direction to, like, it's, personality politics and like, just like, I want this and I'm against that because you're on the other team. And it's not necessary.
What's extraordinary to me is that people will be for something and then they find out that the other side is for it and then they're against it. So that the dynamic can be pretty baroque. We're seeing now. Harry, that was an excellent elevator pitch. And I'm sure our City Biz viewers are leaning in. Feel free. I want you to be free to move beyond the elevator pitch and tell us a little bit about the specific civic journeys that you provide for people, which are that are very exciting. Some of them I know are honed for the college audience and environment, and some are just open to any citizen. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, and I know our viewers would.
Sure. Yeah, we have two programs so far. One, as you mentioned, that we're in the college space. One is called the Unified Challenge College Bowl. And so I was mentioning, like, we wrote this survey and then put people together who voted really differently, who had different ideological perspectives. So that survey now, instead of being 50 questions, is down to 16. So it doesn't take quite as long. But we bring college students together from across the country, again, who fill out a little form when they sign up, and we identify people who are different, either ideologically different or racially different, or, people who come from really different walks of life get paired together, basically. So we call it the Unified Challenge College Bowl, and these two students, they're together, just the two of them, in this online conversation. It's a structured conversation, and the result, after they spend about an hour together, is, and I mean, like, this is like almost invariably in each of these conversations, they realize, gosh, I first they come in, they're like, I was nervous, I was nervous to talk. What were they going to, are they going to kind of, push their views on
me?
They're
going to cancel me, right?
They're going to cancel me, exactly. And at the end of it, we know this from these testimonials we have. So I was nervous, but then I talked to Brian, and like, this guy Brian was like this really nice guy. Got to know him a little bit. We start off with icebreaker questions, and then it turns out that we like mostly agree on most things. And we have some questions in there that we know that people are going to disagree on, so it's not all agreement. And we mostly agree. And even when we disagree, it was interesting to hear, Brian's point of view. Like, it wasn't crazy. Right now, we think that if you have a different point of view, you're crazy. But if you actually sit down and talk to somebody who has a different point of view in a regular, like, rational conversation, just two people, then you're like, oh God, the other side, they're like not nearly as scary as you'd think. So this program, we started this in 2020. Our kind of first one was in the fall of 2021. And we had 10 schools, 200 students. And coming up in like 2 weeks, we have, I guess it's our 7th or 8th one. And we have 300 professors who are participating, 150 universities, and we will probably have 10,000 students. So the growth has been phenomenal because, colleges are like, we gotta get the students to talk to each other. Right. So so that's one of our two programs, and very excited about that. I should add, on that program, we do pre and post survey work. And at the beginning, we ask students how hopeful they are for democracy. And the answer is 14% of students are hopeful for democracy. After just this 1 hour intervention, that number jumps to 64%. 64%. So you have to keep going. Now we're looking at, what's our follow-on? What are we doing next? But as a 1 hour intervention of going from I'm despondent about democracy to, oh, maybe there's hope because I talked to somebody who was different from me, talked to somebody from the other side. And I realized that we're just Americans and we can talk to each other. That's really exciting. And at the end, especially this year, if we ask them if they're registered to vote, and if they're not, we send them to our partner to help register them to vote wherever they are in the country. And then we are also working with a partner to for the students who would like to be poll workers. There's these questions about whether or not the elections are fair. Go be an election judge. Go jump in and actually do the on the ground work of making sure the elections are fair.
Yeah, I love that seamless link between your opening hearts and minds in a very short period, and then you're giving them off ramps to action immediately. That's a great idea.
Thank you. So our other program is, here we have shared goals. Given shared goals, can we have a process where we can find shared solutions to achieve those shared goals together? So we just wrapped up a year-long pilot of our first, what's called a Citizens Assembly in Montrose, Colorado. So Montrose is on the western slope of the Rockies. It's like ranching kind of history. It's pretty mixed, but generally votes Republican. I think it was 67% Trump in 2020. So the question was, can we get a group of randomly selected residents, representative of the demographics and voting registration of their community, to deliberate together over the course of 12 weeks and converge on a set of solutions to a pressing problem in the community, which we focused on the shortage of affordable childcare in Montrose. This was selected by the community as the problem they wanted to focus on. And this assembly it was 46 Montrose residents, which we call delegates, participated in a series of online conversations where they got to know one another, where they learned about the childcare problem in detail, discussed and weighed the merits of various ways of solving the problem, and ultimately voted on whether any of those possible solutions could improve the current situation. And we set a really high threshold for the assembly to acknowledge its support, which was 2/3 of the assembly had to be in favor of it. I mean, as you know, you're lucky if you get 52%, generally. But we're trying to demonstrate that if you have people talking together rationally who don't have political motivations, that you can actually find real consensus. And so out of this very diverse group, they agreed on 5 different approaches to solving the problem. Childcare is complicated, so different parts of the problem, and those are now community leaders in childcare and youth services are now working towards figuring out how to implement these solutions right now in Montrose. We just had our kind of big community celebration where community leaders got up and talked about how they're going to implement solutions last week. But Brian, the frosting on the cake was...
The cake is pretty good. I want the frosting too, though.
Well, wait till you hear the frost. It might not even be a frosting. It might even be a whole other cake. The delegates who were working on this, we got together with delegates and other people who didn't get selected to be delegates, because the way you select delegates is through this kind of lottery process, but people were interested. And they're like, wait, Unify America, you guys are going to be leaving town, at the end of the year when this is done. We don't we don't want this to stop. We want to continue to try to solve problems this way. And so they have formed their own nonprofit organization to continue to do nonpartisan, respectful, productive, deliberative problem solving for other problems. And they named it Unify Montrose. So we're super excited about this because, we were piloting out a particular model for Citizens Assembly, and they're like, well, wait a second. Actually, what we want to test and do is we want to continue to do productive problem solving where we can go after our shared goals together and have that keep going, and not just have the citizens do it, but to work hand in glove with community leaders and with government, so that rather than citizens, showing up when they're angry about something and taking the microphone in front of the panel of government leaders and getting angry, it's like,
been there and done that. So,
so wouldn't it be great to be like, hey, let's agree on what our shared goals together. Let's look at a lot of different ways to potentially solve the problem. Let's look at the pros and cons of each of these ways together. Let's take advantage of our differing perspectives to really figure out what would work best and then come together and do it. And that's what they're doing in Montrose now.
Look, Harry, that's definitely a separate cake. Maybe 15-layer cake. So I'll say a couple quick things that Harry and I share. One of them is that we have a business background, and it would be inconceivable not to encourage diverse perspectives, test them out, find out what works. That's not the way it goes in politics, and it's not because people in politics aren't smart or they don't want to do the right thing for the country. It's just the way it's set up. And you're putting forward some ways to break that logjam in a meaningful way. Another thing we're both, I have to admit, I'm projecting a little bit, but I don't think so. We're both very wonky on all the research on dialogue and deliberation and deliberative democracy and, et cetera. And what you're doing and your team is doing is leveraging all the strengths of that work, which you can open hearts and minds pretty quickly if you get the process right. The issue is longitudinal impact. How do you have those hearts and minds not close up again? And I think this work is exceptional and very exciting. So maybe it's more than another cake. So it's a whole series of cakes, but huge tip of the hat to you and your team. And this takes a lot of work too. This is a big investment. I'm sure you guys did all the groundwork to build trust. So congratulations. You basically addressed my next question, which can be a hard question for people, which is, what have you done in the last year that gives you hope, given all the challenges we're facing? Well, I feel a lot of hope, both from your work in the college space and also your incredible work in Colorado. So I'm going to skip that one with your permission. And I want to go to the next one, which is, what are you most excited about really leaning into over the next year or so?
We're in research mode, as you say. Like, we really are very committed to doing our homework, which sometimes as an entrepreneur is a little hard for me because I'm like, got an idea, let's just try it. But of course, I believe, and my staff even more so, which includes academics, really believe in let's really learn from what other people have already done in a space before we go into it. But what we're examining is, what the delegates and citizens of Montrose are in the process of creating. Should we be looking at trying to help other communities do that and eventually figure out how to do it at scale? You mentioned I have a business background, and it's in communications and tech and entertainment. I have a video game company that I started, and then another company that focuses on taking boring, complicated subjects and making them delightful and helping people make decisions. So, and both of those companies are, the video game company, we have, well over 100 million players a year, and the other one is tens of millions of people participate. So we know something about scaling, and so could we figure out how to help more communities, and maybe colleges and maybe high schools, and give Americans the opportunity to do this deliberative problem solving to try to achieve shared goals together, and have that become part of, like, over time, what we expect. Like, we expect to come in the community and have a place to go, not just to complain or not just to sort of fight for a cause, but to actually work cooperatively with our neighbors or our fellow students on a problem in a respectful way, and take a methodical problem solving approach. What's our goal? What are different ways to solve it? And narrow it down through deliberation. Like, it's like, what if that was part and parcel of the fabric of our democracy? How different things would be. So we don't know exactly what we're going to do on that score yet. I'm obviously super excited about the growth of the College Bowl and what we're doing in the college space. This other piece is kind of still TBD, and we're digging into it.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to speak for myself, but I think every American needs to be rooting for you folks and what you're doing, because it's not about telling people what their priorities are and what they care about. It's creating a space in which common ground can be emergent and people can have the sense of agency to do something about it. And that's a beautiful, powerful thing. It's also really hard. So I also appreciate your humility about about what it takes to make that scalable. So that, again, unbelievably exciting work, and I can't think of anybody who has a better skill set for trying to bring delight to things that are not always delightful. So you've got the track record on that. I want to pivot to a personal question. You've had a lot of amazing and profitable career adventures that gave you an enormous outlet for creativity and having impact on people's lives. And yet you've chosen to go down the road less traveled. And it is a road that I've said to people before, leaning into our political industrial complex and trying to make it better can be sort of like hugging a porcupine. And, you've made a fundamental choice and a bet with your time and your effort, and personally investing and leaning into it. And I'm just curious, I'd like you to share with CityBiz viewers how you came about that. And because we know it's not easy. And I think a lot of these viewers are saying, how can I lean in a way that works for me? And I think your story and that arc would be something that I know I'm interested in, and I think a lot of other people would be.
We have been handed in this generation this torch, of a government that is run by its own people, and none of us know anything different. We grew up in this. Our parents grew up in it. Our grandparents did, and I think it's sort of easy to take it for granted, but it is a millisecond in the span of human history, and it's really precious. And so many people, besides the founders, who, looking back to Greece and Rome and other examples, established this concept. I would say, imperfectly established the concept, because it excluded so many people. And then some of, the greatest Americans in history, some of whose names we know and many whose names we don't know, worked so hard to include all Americans in the story of self-government. And we've made enormous progress on that front, and we still have a ways to go. But I think we're confronting a new challenge now, which is a real question about whether or not democracy works, which is represented by that statistic I mentioned. I know the Bipartisan Policy Council also did a survey, and it was like 80 80 something, like 86% of Americans were worried about the future of democracy. So I'm like, okay, well, this is our challenge. But even with this kind of despondency about the possible about democracy working, I mean, like, look, we have a lot of problems. We have difficulty solving our problems in our democracy right now. It's exacerbated by all kinds of things, the echo chambers that have been created, the conflict entrepreneurs, as I mentioned earlier. But it's also a time of great opportunity. We can make our government of the people much stronger by having mechanisms by which many more Americans can meaningfully participate in governing ourselves, specifically by participating in public problem solving with their fellow Americans. Not by participating in politics, but by participating in problem solving in a nonpartisan, deliberative way. And so why did I get into this? I feel like a huge beneficiary of people who have worked so hard in the generations leading up to this one. And it's our job to make sure that we continue to fortify our government of the people for our children and our children's children. And I consider it a privilege to get to play a role in this extraordinary field, which when I got into this, I had no idea how many organizations are part of, I would guess I would call it the democracy fortification field, for lack of a better term. And it's the more people I meet, the more I realize like how many of us there are who are working on it. And that is it's a real boost. Like it seems dire, but there's so many people working on this, and we can turn this around, and not just turn it around, but as Martin Luther King discussed, like we can further bend the moral arc of history by making our government of the people more inclusive and more thoughtful and more wise.
Harry, thank you so much for sharing that. I'd say for everyone that feels that, there's a subset that lean in, and there's no one I know who's leaning in more than you are. So thank you so much. And I just one quick observation. Look, our founders did have genius, and they did their homework about what can go wrong with democracy as well. They were acutely aware of that. I think we did a nice job in the judiciary to have the jury system. And I think anyone that participates that, and there's a lot of research on that, they come out feeling very differently about that process. I personally had that conversion process, and my jury was a tough group of people to work with, but I still felt enriched. And I think in many ways, what you and your team are trying to bring is that same element of vote and agency and really mattering for key decisions and outcomes that we have to a meaningful degree in that branch of government, but don't have in other branches. So I think it's a beautiful thing. It's deeply rooted in American tradition, but it needs to be enriched. And you folks are, again, I'm a huge fan of what you're doing, the research that's informing it, the process, and the discipline with which you're pursuing it. So again, thank you so much. I want to pivot to my next question, which is by now our City Biz viewers are you want them, you probably had them won over at the elevator pitch, but they want to know how they can lean in and support your work and engage with your processes. What's your recommendation on the best way that people have been moved by your words and your mission and all your good works to help unify along this difficult path?
I appreciate you asking that. Yeah, so twice a month we offer a nationwide version of our Unify Challenge not just to college students, but to anyone who wants to sign up and have a one-on-one conversation with another American who is, not like them. We do our best to try to match people as differently as possible. Um, and you'll get to talk about goals for our country. And our next one is on March 13th. But you can go to unifyamerica.org and sign up. And then I would also say, we are beginning our fundraising journey to support the growth of our College Bowl and other efforts. If you or anyone would like to support our work, you can do that on our website, unifyamerica.org. We're looking for, I guess you would call them like kind of our founding stewards, the first people to help us get going. So, yeah, that's ways they can lean in. The easy ways, but for sure, sign up for the Unified Challenge. That'd be awesome.
I'll make a little pitch for people, and I support. People have to decide where their money goes, and it's their choice. And there's some pretty high stakes elections coming up in 2024. But I'd ask all our viewers to think about, and whether it's a tithe of the percentage that you give to your favorite candidates or more, think about investing in a different way. And again, it's not about standing down on the next election and what you believe and what your concerns are, but it's recognizing that there are organizations like Unify America out there that are really getting at core issues that frankly, if we don't address, we're not going to change the dynamics, no matter who we elect to Washington, the State House, City Hall, et cetera. So I know you got a good donate button there. I think people should consider that. And also get engaged in other opportunities you provide. My last question, and thank you for putting up with all this interrogation, is you're in the space. You keep an eye on it. I'm the founder of Citizen Connect. We've got 600 nonpartisan organizations across the country doing amazing work at a local neighborhood level, at a state level, at a national level. It includes Unify America, which we're very, very proud to have as one of our members. Are there any other organizations that you've come across that you might want to give a shout out to, that people might want to consider taking a peek at and exploring? Number one should be Unify America, but any others that you think should be
Oh, yeah,
explored?
no, absolutely. I mean, there really are so many great organizations run by very committed Americans. Some of the ones, I would mention Resetting the Table. I have really owe them, because I learned from Resetting the Table. I first learned about facilitation, which of course is very important for deliberation, and active listening. And then we ended up taking some of what we learned from Resetting the Table and active listening and putting it into sort of kind of a fun online video format to teach active listening in a way that was a little more scalable using technology and video. Living Room Conversations has been around for a really long time, and we've also taken advantage of their work, where they have these beautiful kind of like dialogue scripts, in a way that facilitators can very easily learn how to bring people together to talk about all kinds of different subjects. I mean, they have at least hundreds of subjects covered, and we've found that people who use Living Room Conversations and come together and have those discussions structured the way Living Room Conversations has structured them, they're really positive conversations, and people feel like they are finally able to talk about something that maybe they were worried or nervous about talking about. But the way it's set up, the way it asks questions, makes it really so much more kind of safe, I guess, to have those conversations. And then finally, a shout out to our partner, All In. They are they're the ones that we are working with on helping students register to vote at the end of the Unified Challenge. And that's something that we're really excited that we can offer. We certainly would never be able how would we ever help students from across the country register? And All In has got that down. So shout out to them.
Harry, thank you so much. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. Huge fan of yours, of your team, of what you're doing. I can't wait to see how it's going to play out. What I do know is you're going to be smart and disciplined, and your hearts are in the right place. So the only question is how much progress you're going to make, how fast, not whether you're going to contribute significantly to America's health and resilience. I also want to say to our City Biz viewers, it doesn't require quitting your day job and working on it 80 hours a week, like Harry, to make the country better. Although we invite anybody that wants to do that to lean in. So reach out to either of us, and we'll put you to work. But there's so many opportunities, and that's one of the things that Unify America provides, to be able to have time to live your life, have your job, go to church, walk the dog, cook dinner, and still make a difference and still connect with people. Harry had mentioned this linking of people with differences. I've done this myself. I had trepidation too. And I had a deep, deep experience with somebody who we didn't think we agreed on many things. And to Harry's initial point, the how, no agreement. But the core why America matters, why community matters, and what we want for our kids and grandkids, total alignment. And so, Harry, your efforts to create these kind of opportunities and these epiphanies is so important. So thank you so much. Wishing all the best to you and your team, and can't wait to see how the next chapter plays out.
Great. Thanks so much, Brian. Really appreciate you having me.